So you're looking to really get a handle on the important stuff,
Right.
right? The things shaping our health.
Yeah.
But without, wading through tons of medical jargon or endless studies.
Yeah, people want those core insights, those aha moments,
Yeah.
but without feeling completely overwhelmed by all the data out there.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. The Bio-Psychosocial Model of Health and Wellness.
And what's really fascinating about this model is its core idea. Our health isn't just biology. It's this, intricate dance between our bodies, our minds, thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and, importantly, our social world.
A truly holistic way of looking at it.
Definitely.
And we've gathered some really interesting sources for this deep dive. We've got some background stuff on health psychology, the basics of the model itself, a really clear explanation from Verywell Mind, and an editorial from the International Journal of Body, Mind, and Culture that digs into its importance and the challenges of using it in practice.
And there's also that paper proposing an update, right? Bringing technology into the mix.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Bio-Psychosociotechnical Model. Quite a name.
So our mission today is really to unpack this biopsychosocial model. Look at its core ideas, how it impacts health, especially mental health.
Face some of the criticism squarely.
Right. And then consider this potential next step, this evolution that includes technology, which is, everywhere now.
Okay, great. So maybe to kick things off, what exactly is health psychology? What's it trying to achieve? It feels like understanding that kind of sets the stage for the model itself.
Yeah, that's a perfect place to start. Health psychology, it got a key definition back in 1980 from Matarazzo. Essentially, it's looking at how psychology contributes to, everything health-related.
Everything. That sounds broad.
It is. It's not just promoting health or preventing illness. Those are key goals Serafino highlighted. It's also about figuring out why people get sick or stay healthy and how psychology can help improve, the whole healthcare system and even policy.
Okay, so promoting health, preventing illness.
Yeah.
Seems straightforward enough on the surface.
It does, but here's the kicker. And where the need for something like the biopsychosocial model really becomes obvious. Pitts pointed out this paradox. We often know what we should do for our health.
Oh, yeah. Eat better, exercise more. We know the drill.
Exactly. But knowing it, that knowledge alone often isn't enough to actually make us do it consistently. Think about it. How many times have you known something's good for you but struggled to stick with it?
Constantly. It's the classic knowing-doing gap.
Precisely. So that begs the really important question. If knowing isn't enough, what else do we need? What actually motivates us to take care of ourselves?
And this feels like exactly where the biopsychosocial model comes in, offering a fuller picture beyond just biology or information alone.
You got it. It pushes past just looking at disease biologically and starts considering the whole person in their world, which leads us straight to the three core parts of the model.
Right, the bio, the psycho, and the social. Let's take a look at each. Biological, that seems like the most familiar one, the traditional medical focus.
Yeah, definitely. That covers, our genes, our physiology, how diseases actually work in the body. Things like inherited risks, how organs function, the physical side of illness.
Makes sense.
But the key insight of this model is that biology is just one piece of the puzzle. You absolutely have to look at the psychological part too.
Which is everything going on inside our heads. Thoughts, feelings, coping mechanisms, our beliefs about health. Our actions.
Yes, exactly. How we think, how we feel about health issues, the stress we're under, the choices we make day to day, all hugely important. And then there's the third leg, the social.
And that's our connection to the outside world, right?
Yeah.
Money, job status, our relationships, social support, culture, where we live.
Yeah.
All those external things.
Absolutely. Socioeconomic factors, who we have around us for support, cultural norms, community safety. These external elements profoundly impact health outcomes.
And the really crucial idea here is that these three biopsychosocial allos, they aren't separate silos. They're constantly interacting, influencing each other.
Right. That's the core concept. They overlap and interact in really complex ways, affecting our well-being and our risk for illness. Understanding these interactions, that's how we get to more effective, tailored treatments.
So it's moving beyond just symptom management to understanding the whole person in their life, like their own awareness, their relationship with doctors, their specific situation. It feels much more human-centered.
It really is. Dr. Akeem Marsh, in that Verywell Mind piece, describes it as centering social determinants of mental health right alongside the biomedical and psychological stuff.
Social determinants, that's a key phrase.
Definitely. And he also mentions a handy framework, the 4 Ps for figuring out a case. Predisposing factors, what makes you vulnerable. Precipitating, what triggered it. perpetuating what keeps it going, and protective, what helps you.
Predisposing, precipitating, perpetuating, protective. That sounds like a really practical way to sort through all those biopsychosocial factors for an individual.
It's a great tool for organizing your thinking, yeah.
Okay, let's zoom in on mental health for a bit. How does using this biopsychosocial lens really shift how we think about and tackle mental well-being?
Well, traditionally, physical health care often focus heavily on the biological, fix the body part.
Right.
And mental health care maybe lean more towards the psychological therapy, understanding thought patterns. The biopsychosocial model pushes for integration in both areas, but its impact on mental health can be really profound.
How so? What changes?
Because sometimes the best way to help someone mentally isn't just therapy or medication targeting the mind or brain chemistry directly. Sometimes you need to address the social stuff first.
Like what?
Like, if someone's incredibly anxious because they lost their job and can't pay rent, a major social stressor just talking about anxiety techniques might not be enough if those basic security needs aren't met. Addressing the social determinant might be the most effective first step.
That makes total sense. Deal with the root cause, which might be social or economic.
Yeah.
So tackling those underlying issues could mean maybe less intensive therapy or medication is needed later, and the improvement is more solid.
Exactly. And the Very Well Mind article had that great example. If depression symptoms are actually caused by, say, an underactive thyroid that's a biological issue, therapy alone won't fix it until the thyroid problem is treated.
Right. You can't ignore one piece. It really highlights how linked these things are.
Definitely. And Dr. Marsh also pointed out how this helps healthcare providers, too. They start seeing patients not just as a diagnosis or a set of symptoms, but as whole people, with complex lives and contexts.
It fosters a much richer, more nuanced understanding.
Yeah.
Moving beyond just the illness itself.
Absolutely. But like any model, this one isn't perfect. It's faced some real criticisms and challenges in actually putting it into practice, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. That introductory PDF we looked at mentioned some key ones. One big practical issue is that it can be really time-consuming and, frankly, expensive to apply properly.
Right, because you're gathering so much more info.
Exactly. If you're really digging into socioeconomic status, culture, religion, all the psychological bits, that takes way more time and resources than just, say, a standard biomedical checkup.
That time investment is a huge hurdle in systems often designed for quick throughput.
And the same source also mentioned a more fundamental criticism, that the model kind of lacks a super clear theoretical underpinning, or at least consistent scientific evidence in the way we usually think of it.
Meaning it's hard to prove in a lab.
Sort of. Because it's so broad and holistic, designing those really tight controlled studies to definitively show its effectiveness across the board is just tricky.
Yeah, Dr. Marsh touched on that too in the Very Well Mind piece. He noted that some critics argue it's not truly scientific because doing randomized controlled trials, the supposed gold standard, is incredibly difficult when the whole point is individualized holistic care. How do you control variables when you're trying to consider everything?
It's a genuine methodological puzzle. And that editorial from the International Journal of Body, Mind, and Culture raised another key point. Even though the idea is strong, and there is evidence supporting its principles, actually using it consistently in clinics, that's been surprisingly patchy.
Why is that? What are the roadblocks?
Well, the editorial points to some big ones: systemic barriers, professional habits, even cultural resistance. A major one is just the sheer dominance of the traditional biomedical model. It's deeply baked into medical training and how hospitals often work.
So the focus stays on pathology, diagnosis, drugs.
Right. That focus often unintentionally sidelines the psychosocial stuff. Doctors might not get enough training in doing good psychosocial assessments, or, crucially, how to actually integrate that info into a treatment plan. There's often an educational gap there.
And a lack of practical skills, maybe.
Exactly. Plus, there's a challenge of teamwork. This model really shines with interdisciplinary collaboration, doctors, psychologists, social workers, all talking. But the editorial notes, healthcare systems are often fragmented, siloed. It's hard for different professionals to truly collaborate seamlessly, share info, coordinate care in that integrated way.
Resource limits probably don't help either.
No, definitely not. Fragmentation and resource constraints make that true teamwork tough.
That makes sense.
And then you have to talk about money. The editorial also flags financial constraints. The way healthcare is often paid for doesn't always reward spending that extra time on deep psychosocial assessments or recommending non-medical supports.
Right. If the reimbursement models don't support the time needed for this holistic approach.
It creates a real barrier to adoption, even if doctors believe it's the right thing to do.
So, a potentially great model facing some serious real-world hurdles, systemic, educational, financial.
Pretty much. Now, you mentioned that research paper proposing an evolution of this model, the Bio-Psychosocial one. That's quite a mouthful.
It is, but it's a really interesting idea. Proposed by Alan Card in 2022, it's basically an extension that weaves in socio-technical systems theory.
Socio-technical. What does that mean in this context?
Think of it as recognizing that technology isn't just a neutral tool. It's deeply embedded in our social fabric, changing how we interact, work, live, how we experience health. So this model explicitly adds technology as another key interacting factor. It's trying to address some of those criticisms we just discussed, especially about practical application in today's world.
Okay, so adding techno to the mix.
Yeah.
What does that really change? What's fundamentally different?
Well, first, it brings technology in as a distinct major influence on health, right alongside bio, psycho, and social. And technology here is defined really broadly.
Not just phones and computers.
No, much broader. It includes all designed artifacts, hardware, software, sure, but also the buildings we live and work in, assistive devices, communication systems, basically the entire artificial world humans have created.
Wow, okay. That's a very wide lens. So how does it conceptualize these different factors compared to the original model?
There are a couple of key shifts. Instead of seeing bio, psycho, and social as nested layers within one system, this new model suggests thinking of them, plus technology, as separate but deeply interconnected, complex, adaptive systems.
Like interacting ecosystems, maybe.
Yeah.
Each with its own rules, but influencing the others.
That's a great way to put it. It gives more distinct recognition to each domain's influence. And the second big difference, obviously, is explicitly including this whole technological, artificial world as a direct determinant of health.
Which the original model, developed pre-internet age, largely didn't account for.
Exactly. Engel's original model came about before technology became so utterly pervasive. Today, it's undeniable that tech shapes our health in countless ways, good and bad. This model brings that reality front and center.
And I recall you saying this model tries to be more of a practical theory, offering more of a roadmap for actually doing something to improve health. How does it do that?
Yeah, it introduces several elements to boost practicality. One is clearly separating health status, how healthy someone is, from the health and needs assessment process.
What's the significance of that separation?
It emphasizes defining the health issues not just medically, but also based on the person's or community's own goals, needs, and values. It's about framing the problem in a way that resonates with the people affected, not just imposing a purely clinical definition.
So, moving beyond just the diagnosis to what healthy actually means for that person or group.
Precisely. It also frames health as an emergent property of this whole complex bio-psycho-socio-technical system. You can't just directly fix health. You have to influence the underlying systems.
Okay.
And related to that, it broadens the focus from just medical treatments to a wider range of interventions. An intervention could be anything that modifies any part of that system, biological, psychological, social, or technological, to improve health.
So an intervention could be designing a more walkable neighborhood or creating a better health app, not just prescribing a pill or therapy.
Exactly. And it strongly pushes for participatory design involving the people affected in designing those interventions. They have the lived experience.
That makes sense. Anything else?
Yes, it also explicitly includes intervention management, recognizing that improving health is usually an ongoing process needing monitoring and adjustment over time.
So it really is trying to offer more concrete tools, tackling that criticism that the original model could be hard to operationalize, hard to know exactly what data to gather or what steps to take.
That's the goal, to be more actionable. And the paper had that table showing concrete examples of technology's impact, right? Both good and bad.
Yeah, things like home monitoring devices, health apps, robotics, assistive tech, even electronic health records, and the design of hospital rooms.
And it highlights that double-edged sword. Wearables can empower patients, but poorly designed apps can worsen inequality. EHRs should improve safety, but can cause errors if badly implemented. Robotics can help, but raise questions about human connection.
It really drives home how carefully we need to think about designing and using technology in healthcare, considering all those ripple effects across the bio, psycho, and social domains.
Absolutely. The biopsychosociotechnical model tries to provide a framework for that, a more comprehensive, systems-oriented, and hopefully more actionable way to pursue human-centered health improvement in our tech-filled world.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. In our deep dive today, we've really unpacked how the biopsychosocial model offers this incredibly valuable, holistic way to think about health. It stresses that deep connection between our biology, psychology, and social worlds.
Yeah, and we saw how it's been especially useful for understanding mental health better, pushing us to consider how much things like social support, stress, and environment really matter for our well-being.
But we also looked squarely at the hurdles, the challenges in actually implementing it widely, the inertia of the old biomedical model, the difficulties with teamwork, the financial disincentives.
Right, and those critiques about its theoretical basis and the challenge of proving its effectiveness with traditional research methods.
And then we explored this potential next step, the biopsychosociotechnical model, adding technology explicitly into the frame and trying to offer a more practical, systems-based approach for actually improving health in today's world.
And hopefully understanding these models helps everyone listening think a bit more broadly about their own health, recognizing all those different interacting factors inside us and around us that shape our health journey.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought to leave everyone with. As technology becomes even more intertwined with our lives and our healthcare, how is that going to keep reshaping these holistic models? How will we balance the biological, the psychological, the social, and this ever-growing technological dimension in the future? Something to ponder.
It's a fascinating question, and the picture is constantly evolving.
Indeed. Well, hopefully this deep dive gave everyone a clearer, more nuanced view of where things stand now.